Hey, how are you today? This is Josh Patrick, and you're at the Sustainable Business Podcast. And we're today with Kathleen Burns Kingsbury. And right now we're on Facebook Live, but we are going to switch over very shortly to our podcast episode, which, believe it or not, is episode 131. That means there's 131 of these things I've done. And we're going to go for a while over there. When we're done, we'll come back to Facebook Live. And if there's any questions that get asked, then we will come back and answer those questions. But in the meantime, I'm going to start the podcast, and we'll bring Kathleen in, and we'll have this great conversation about money. So here we go. I'm nuts. Oh, I'm going to start again. I don't know why I did this, but it did something.
Do I have to do anything when we go over to the podcast?
No, you don't have to, but it's doing so. I don't know what's going on here. Zencaster is doing a weird thing. So, Kathleen, why
You want me to
don't we
look
wait
at
for
me?
Zencaster to reset itself? Why don't we just start our conversation for a while?
Okay.
So we'll do this again. In fact, I have to kill that, and we're going to restart Zencaster, which unfortunately is really, I don't know, this has never happened to me. Anyway, why did you write your book?
I wrote Breaking Money Silence because I was fed up with the fact that people weren't talking about money. And I also was kind of curious about why is it in our society that we talk about so many things that used to be taboo, like religion and sex and politics, but we still feel really uncomfortable talking about money. So I set out to both speak up about a taboo topic and also learn a little bit more about it. And as a result, I've had some really great money conversations that I'm convinced there's a lot of people out there, including financial advisors, but certainly people too, who want to engage in meaningful money conversations. They just need a little help doing it. And the book is really geared towards helping people just start that conversation.
Cool. So Zencaster's come back, and I am going to start our podcast again. We'll try it now.
Excellent.
Yeah. Hey, this is Josh Patrick, and you're at the Sustainable Business Podcast. Our guest today is Kathleen Burns Kingsbury, and she has a brand new book out. It's called Breaking Money Silence, How to Shatter Money Taboos, Talk More Openly About Finances, and Live a Richer Life. And today we're going to talk specifically about what private business owners need to be doing when it comes to money conversations. And my experience is most of their money conversations are pretty bad. So let's bring Kathleen in. I'm going to ask her, first of all, what she does, and she'll tell us a bit about that, and then we'll get into the topic. So Kathleen, welcome to the show today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, me too. So Kathleen, tell me a little bit about your background. What makes you a money expert? How did you get here?
How did I get here? I think that's more than 20 minutes long, but I'll give you the short answer, which which basically is I have a background in banking and finance and a background in psychology. And in 2006 or 7, around that time, I decided to blend the two worlds. Took everything I love about working with women and women's empowerment and the psychology of women, and everything I love about finance, which tends to be the behavioral finance or behavioral change component. And I blended them together to start my firm, KBK Wealth Connection. And since then, I primarily train financial advisors to communicate and connect with women, couples, and families more effectively, and to engage in meaningful wealth conversations.
Cool. So
yeah,
let's start off and say, what does a meaningful wealth conversation look like?
Well, I think a meaningful wealth conversation is, the definition would certainly be up to both parties. But in general, what I'm talking about when I'm talking about breaking money silence is the idea of having a financial dialogue that is about more than just dollars and cents. So it's not just about the numbers. It's about what's underneath our financial decisions. What are our goals? What are our values? What are the automatic thoughts we have about money that impact our decision making around how we're going to use it in our lives, or save it, or invest it? And so I think a meaningful conversation just goes a little step deeper than just talking about the technical sides or the numerical side of money.
So you're dealing with what a lot of people in the industry refer to as the softer side, and what
Mm,
I like to call the purposeful side of money.
nice. I wince a little bit with the softer side because the softer side makes it kind of poo-poos it, makes it like, oh, and I know what you're saying. That's what the industry calls it. But a colleague of mine, she happens to have the same first name, Kathleen Reel, who works a little bit in this space. She talks a lot about how the financial conversations are actually the hardest part of it. So I've started calling it the human side of finance as opposed to the softer side.
Oh, I like that. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a very good thing. So one of the things that I've noticed a lot over the years is that business owners, specifically male business owners, are extraordinarily bad about talking about money and what's going on with money in the business with their spouses. Has that been your experience, or have you had some experience with that?
I have. I think gender-wise, it may be that men have been raised that they're supposed to be providers and they're supposed to take care of it and not be vulnerable. So that may block them from having money conversations with their spouses. But I would say that I think it's just really hard for business owners to find the time and for their partners to set aside the time to have these types of conversations. So while I think they're necessary, I can certainly feel for why it's complicated to begin that dialogue in a society that says, you know what, we're really not supposed to talk about it. And if you're a man, you're supposed to have it all handled for your female counterpart.
Yeah, but at the same time, and this is my experience when I've dealt with
Mm-hmm.
spouses of these business owners, is these spouses are generally scared to death. And there's usually not a very good reason for them to be scared to death because the business is fine, the cash flow is fine, the profits are fine, the
Mm-hmm.
financial security of the family is usually at least okay, but still in all, they're frightened. And wouldn't it make sense that the spouses might be the ones who should really initiate this conversation?
Well, I think someone should initiate that conversation. And when you say that the spouses are scared, but it doesn't make sense, I think one of the things we need to kind of keep in
Oh,
mind, and this,
by the way, it makes tremendous amount of sense
okay.
because they don't know what's going on.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood what you're saying.
If they did know what was going on, it wouldn't make any sense at that point.
Okay,
It's
two things. I'm reacting to two things. The first is, yes, I think having more knowledge, more information often, no matter what your gender is, often does calm you down in terms of, okay, I'm fearful because I don't know. The unknown is often very frightening for people. So more information and having a conversation, I think, would be really useful and certainly something I'm a proponent of. However, there are situations, and you may not be talking about this, Josh, where women in particular may be fearful, and even when they have the data that says that they're okay, they still worry that they're not going to be. That tends to be a female phenomenon, and it tends to be more about the emotional side of money and less about the rational side of money. But certainly, I think information all the way around and having a dialogue and an interchange makes perfect sense and can go a great distance in really helping business owners and their significant others and their families understand what's going on and feel more confident in what's going on.
so spouses being scared, even if they have the information, is
Mm-hmm.
there a behavioral finance component in there of some sort? And if there is, which one would it be?
In terms of an error, you mean like a behavioral
No,
finance
not
error?
an error, but a belief system.
Well,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, what with people who have this, it's happen more to women than men. It's when somebody fears that they're going to run out of money before outlive their money, even when they have the money. And so I think it really gets down to women not having the information, but when they have the information, it can be not feeling confident in their ability to make and manage and invest money, especially if their partner dies first or leaves them. It also can have a lot to do with what they saw in their own history. Like maybe mom once dad was gone, really struggled and didn't do very well. And they're afraid they're going to repeat that pattern. Women, just like men, have a great ability to take care of themselves financially. But unfortunately, until recently, the previous generations, later boomers, certainly traditionalists, and some Gen Xers have not been really encouraged to learn about finance and take care of themselves financially. And I think that's where the fear comes from, is a lack of confidence, a lack of knowledge. And then sometimes it can be really irrational. And, I saw my mom go through this. I'm just really fearful. I don't want to go through the same thing.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do we get it so spouses are supportive of their business owner spouses? Too many spouses in here.
Yeah, I was saying.
and not be quite so scared. What could they be doing that would help them along with that?
Well, I think all couples, and especially business owners, should have routine or regular money conversations. And that sounds so boring, right? Like, I want to do that on a Saturday. But I think that these conversations can be pretty quick, right? If you do them regularly, they don't have to be this big drawn out thing. It can be, 15, 20 minutes checking in. Maybe it starts off, if you've never done this before, it starts off with saying, hey, let's spend some time and talk about what we feel good about in terms of what's happening in the business financially or what's happening in our personal lives financially. And then over time, you might move to, more charged topics like things that aren't going as well, or concerns such as legacy planning, or what kind of lessons do we want to teach the kids. But I think if all adults, and especially partners, and especially if you have this complicated family structure that you have a business and you have a family, if you can just set aside some time to have that conversation, it really can go a long way, not only in helping both of you feel more comfortable about what's happening in your lives financially, but there's actually research that shows that couples who talk about money more often actually are more satisfied in their marriages. So for the male business owners out there thinking, I don't want to do this, just know it can increase intimacy and it can make your wives very happy.
How about the other way around, where the woman is the business owner and the male is the outside spouse? Would there be a different sort of strategy that you would be pursuing there, or is same rules both sides?
I think the rules are pretty similar. I think what's different is women are hardwired, and we're often socialized to want to collaborate and to want to talk things through. And so we may, and this is a generalization, but we may have a greater tendency to do that. In my house, I'm the female business owner, and my husband, well, I wouldn't call him an outsider. He doesn't work in my business. He works for someone else. And, I have to say that we do talk about our financial lives a fair amount because I try to practice what we preach, but I don't know how much I sit down and actually tell him what's going on in the business. So I may be very similar to some of those male business owners out there, not even thinking it might be a concern for him.
Yeah, so it might be useful for folks, just as a sort of a first thing that you might want to think about, is to ask your spouse how they feel about your financial security and kind of start that conversation. Here's my other question. It sounds to me like you're not recommending these be moderated conversations. They're just conversations. Does it make sense to start with moderated conversations around this first?
I actually think it depends on who the couple is. Sometimes you can listen to this podcast or watch this Facebook Live or read an article, and you can then bring that information to your significant other and you guys can start a dialogue. There are some couples that are capable of doing that, and usually it's because both partners want to have that conversation. For others, and especially when it comes to money, it can be kind of scary, depending on what your thoughts and beliefs are about talking about money. And so often what I encourage people to do is to find an advisor like yourself, or a financial planner, or somebody, even a counselor, who could help facilitate that conversation or get the dialogue started. And in my new book, I offer at the end of each chapter, Josh, some exercises. So like coaching activities that can help people who are, self-helpers start that conversation. but also can help their advisors take those exercises and work with their clients. So I think it really depends, but there's no shame, and it certainly can be extremely helpful to have somebody who's a third party who's pretty neutral that can get the dialogue started.
So what happens when, I'm giving you all these sort of stupid hypotheticals, but here's another one for you.
Okay. Bring them on.
What happens when one spouse wants to have the conversation and the other doesn't? What's your recommendation?
Oh, give up. No, that's not my recommendation. That happens more often than not. You know this, Josh, right? That happens more often than not. That there's one person who's really into it, and the other person's like, I don't want to talk about it. Why are you bothering me? Right. There's a couple of techniques that I encourage people to use. One is if your spouse doesn't want to talk about or have a financial conversation with you, certainly you don't want to berate them with this all the time, because that's just what I do think is work experience. I know you don't want to talk about money, or you don't want to follow this advice that I heard on this podcast, but can you tell me a little bit about, why? Help me understand why you don't want to have the conversation. There may be some really good reasons why the person doesn't want to have the conversation. It could be as simple as this isn't the time, or, I grew up that when my parents talked about money, they just fought about money and I don't want to fight with you. The business isn't going well. I don't want to talk with you about it, whatever the case may be. And then if you find out why and you go, oh, then I need to do my own work, and you can, continue to work on your relationship with money. The other thing, and I say this a lot with aging parents, but I think this works with partners as well, is it's something called, from the counseling world, called the broken record technique. And so it's every once in a while bringing it up, saying, it'd be really helpful if we could just have a short conversation about money. I know maybe this isn't your favorite thing to do. And then the person goes, no, I told you I didn't want to do this. And they say, you know what, I hear you, but I'm going to probably follow up again in a couple of weeks because it's really important to me. And so you just kind of chip away at it. There are going to be people who are never going to have this dialogue with you, but I'm convinced if you can express to them why it's important to you, and assure them that it's not going to be a forever conversation, like it's not going to go on for hours and hours, and you also can find out what their resistance is, over time you can move towards having a little bit of a dialogue. And the last thing I would recommend is start with successes. What are our successes? Help the other person feel good about the money conversation. You certainly don't want to start with everything they've done wrong in your viewpoint, because that's not going to be something that's going to be enjoyable for either one of you. Does that make sense, Josh?
That makes a lot of sense. Actually, we had a podcast yesterday, a Facebook Live session yesterday, where I talked with Ed Jacobson about appreciative inquiry.
Yes. I know of his work.
Yeah, he's great, does great stuff. And that's essentially the whole thing there, to start with something good and build on it, which to me tends to make a lot of sense. Now, you mentioned legacy planning just a minute ago, and I'm good friends with Tom Deans, who's written a book called Will and Wisdom, which you may be aware of. And Tom has done some research, and he tells me that only half the people in North America have wills, and only 5% of those people who have wills actually talk about what's in the will. Do you have any opinion about that and some things that you might think people should do?
When they say talk about what's in the will, you mean the specific amounts that are going to people?
And a conversation about what decisions you made,
the assets that are being passed.
Made them, who's going to get some stuff, where does philanthropy fit in, and especially if you intend to leave more money to the charity.
You're going in and out a little, so.
I'm sorry, excuse me? Oops, we lost Kathleen for a second, and hopefully she will come back. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. Here he is.
You're back.
Hello.
Again.
Well, you're back. That's how. See, my perspective is you're back. Your perspective is I'm back.
Well, you actually went away, and when you do the Facebook Live, and you look at it, you'll see that you went away. It wasn't
me. You are correct. I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you, Josh. So do you want me to answer that question in terms of the legacy?
Yes,
okay.
Please.
Okay. I feel very strongly that parents can really give a great gift to their adult children if they have a conversation with them, or several conversations, it's usually not just one, about their plans, their legacy plans. And certainly with a business, you're going to want to make sure you talk to them not only about personal legacy, but also what's going to happen with the business. Hopefully there'll be a whole succession plan, whether it's, you're liquidating the business, whether one of the children or several of the children are taking on the business, or, whatever the case may be. But I think that once again, knowledge is power. And having those conversations with your adult children can be initially difficult, but can be so rewarding. And I can give you 2 examples from my own life. My mother, several years ago, now it's been probably 15 years ago, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and my dad was her primary caregiver. And one of the things that Dad did early on is he very much focused on, I think this helped him with all the emotions, but he very much focused on getting the family trust in order, and the wills, and the healthcare proxies and all that kind of stuff. And so what his estate planner did was he had myself and my sister in to talk with him, because my dad had a concern of what was going to happen if he died before my mother, because he was the primary caregiver for her as she continued to get more ill. And at that point, my mother was not healthy enough to attend the meeting, so it was the 3 of us, my father, my sister, myself, and the attorney. And in that 45-minute dialogue, my father was able to share information with me. It wasn't necessarily the specifics of what was in his will, other than we knew kind of that it was going to be split between the 2 siblings, but more about what was important to him in terms of my mom's care if he died first, and a little bit about what he had hoped my sister and I would take on as his legacy. And in those 45 minutes, and I was very close to my father, but in those 45 minutes, I learned so much more about my dad, about my sister, and certainly had a lot of respect for that attorney who facilitated that conversation. Because even though this is what I do for a living, when I'm the adult child, it doesn't mean I always act professionally, or having a facilitator is really useful. And so that made a really big difference when my mom was sick and eventually passed on, to be able to have that dialogue. As a quick follow-up, recently there was some other changes in my family. I went back to my dad, had a dialogue with him one-on-one about some of my concerns or questions about the estate plan. And we could have a very calm adult conversation about it. And I'm convinced it's because 10, 15 years ago, the foundation was laid that it's okay in my family, a legacy. And so that's a gift that my dad has given me that I really hope that a lot of folks out there who are listening in will give to their adult children, or the adult children will ask for that gift from their parents.
So in my experience, the parents have to lead that charge. Children can ask, but parents will more often than not say no, unless they already have a predisposition towards saying yes. And I really think that as parents, we need to be the adults in the room, although this sounds sort of silly, because
I understand. Yeah.
Ideally,
it doesn't always happen that way, though, does it, Josh? I mean, ideally, it would be great if parents always led the charge. But I have had a couple of people I interviewed for the book where the parents got sick, and then the adult children started to ask questions, and then together they started to do it. So it wasn't.
Yeah, I think that's the exception right there. That okay. When I always sound like everything coming out of my mouth is true 100% of the time, and I never mean it that way, but I know it always comes across that way. What I'm talking about, the majority of the time, now one of those exceptions is when you have a terminal illness as an adult, you're probably going to be more likely to accept questions from your kids because the end is, you can see the end. But when you can't see the end, it becomes a harder thing for adults to have their children bring it up, and easier for parents to bring it up. And in my opinion, I think the parents need to be the initiators, if at all possible. It's hard for kids to say.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Kids to say, "Hey, mom and dad, what's in your will?" We don't want to sound greedy.
Well, yes, because even when I brought up this recent issue with my father, I felt like Ooh, I hope, and I said this directly because I'm a direct communicator, but I said, I hope you don't think this is about money. It's more about kind of value and knowing that when you're no longer with us, making sure that things are, as good as they can be, given the fact that you'd be grieving. But you're right. As an adult child, I thought, oh, I hope this isn't being construed as, Kathleen's greedy. And I do think greedy or rude, or we're going to make mom uncomfortable. But what I've found is that, and maybe it's because I'm an adult child that I don't have kids, but I've found a lot of my peers are the ones who are kind of just planting the seed with mom and dad, and then mom and dad come along for the ride. But folks that work with you or have businesses that have wealth advisors and professionals that can help them out, their wealth advisors should be bringing up the idea of these conversations and planting the seed as well.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but I am a CFP also. So
I do. I called you an advisor. I use the word advisor for everybody, but yes, I do know you're a CFP.
Yeah.
So I did my homework.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
You're 3 steps ahead of me. So Kathleen, unfortunately, we are out of time for the podcast episode. And I know I'm going to buy your book and read it. And I'm going to bet some other people would like to buy your book and read it.
I would
How
love
would
that.
they go about it? And hopefully leave a review on Amazon while they're at it.
Oh, yeah.
So
2 easy ways. One is Amazon. It's called Breaking Money Silence. And there's a long subtitle. And my name is Kathleen Burns Kingsbury, but Breaking Money Silence on Amazon. And then also you can go to book's website, which is breakingmoneysilence.com. And there's information about the book. There's a video book trailer, and there's a lot of freebies that you can sign up with. Tip sheets on how to start these conversations, on how to how to fight fair financially, how to talk to your teens about kids. So definitely go to breakingmoneysilence.com and check that out.
Okay, cool. And if somebody wanted to have a conversation with you, could they email you or?
Oh, absolutely.
Cool.
There's a contact me form, and I'm on Twitter at KBK Speaks. I love to connect with people who are reading my work. I get the most joy in knowing how it's impacted people and what are the further questions that you have that I can answer potentially in my next book.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I also have an offer for you. I have a book, a 1 hour, it's actually a 48-minute free audio CD course, and it's called the Financial Freedom Project. And it's essentially what you need to know as a private business owner about achieving financial freedom from your business. And it doesn't mean you're going to leave your business, but someday you probably may want to have the option to do that. To get it, it's really easy. You take out your smartphone, and you do not take your smartphone out while you're driving, especially if you happen to be in Vermont, because I'm probably riding my bike. And
it isn't funny, actually.
Yeah, take out your smartphone and text RETIRE1. That's the number 1. RETIRE1 to 44222. That's RETIRE1 to 44222. And this is Josh Patrick. You're at The Sustainable Business. I hope to see you back here really soon again. And Kathleen, let's continue on for a while, if you have some time.
I do.
Cool. So I have some other questions for you. So if you have an unhealthy money mindset, and I'm amazed at how many people in the world have unhealthy money mindsets, how do you change that? Or how do you work with somebody who has that?
It's a great question. I'm assuming, well, I don't want to assume. For people who don't know what a money mindset is, it's your automatic thoughts and beliefs about money. It's kind of like the self-talk that's in your head. We all have it. And so your automatic thoughts and beliefs about money do impact how you save, spend, gift, and invest, whether you're aware of it or not. And a lot of us are not aware of it. And so that self-talk sometimes can be unhealthy. So an example might be, I have the thought that, spending money is bad. And if I think that, then every time I spend money, I feel horrible, I feel bad. Well, sometimes there's a real reason to spend money or invest in yourself. And so you can have an unhealthy money mindset around spending that can get in the way of you actually taking care of yourself and being able to buy the things that you need to buy or invest. So with that said, if you want to change that mindset, the first step, Josh, is actually to become aware that you have a mindset. So anybody who just listened to my 2-second spiel on that, you now know you have a money mindset. So it's being aware of it, then taking some time to figure out, what are my automatic thoughts about money? Where do they come from? Did I learn this from my mom? Did I learn this from my dad? Is this something that I picked up along the way in my own personal experience? And then once you kind of get a little bit more insight into your own thoughts and beliefs about money, then you can pick out and say, here are certain money mindsets that I want to change. So you can start to challenge them. You can start to say, okay, spending money is bad is a mindset that I have. It sometimes doesn't make me feel very good. Is it always true, or is it just sometimes true? And so part of the work is being able to decide, when does it make sense to follow that money mindset, and when does it make sense to go, you know what, some spending is good, and to change it up a little bit. And I talk about that in Breaking Money Silence and also a previous work.
Oops, unfortunately, Kathleen has frozen again. Oh, you're unfrozen again. Nope, looks like you're frozen.
I think we just froze up again.
Nope, you just unfroze, or at least I can hear you now.
Did we just freeze up again?
You did.
Anyway, method, and it's basically identifying your mindset, challenging your mindset, and then adopting a new way of thinking that is.
Oops, we're frozen again. I think we might have a buffer problem. Yep, we lost Kathleen. Well, she's back again.
I am. I was just about to refresh my browser, but I figured you'd take care of it for me, Josh.
Well, I'm not sure how I would do that, but
well, you did it. You just refreshed your browser, and here I am again.
No, actually, I didn't refresh my browser.
Oh,
you didn't? I was just sitting here waiting for you to come back.
What did I cut off on?
You cut off on, I hate to say this, but I don't remember because I was focusing on your freezing.
So let me summarize.
Okay.
If you want to change your money mindset, the first step is to become aware that you have automatic thoughts and beliefs about money. The second step is then to examine, when do these thoughts and beliefs help me and actually improve my financial either peace of mind or my financial security or make good financial sense? And then when do they get in the way? And when they get in the way and they cause you to be unhealthy around money, then it's time to start to examine whether they serve you or not. And there's a whole method called the MOM method, which is in my book, Breaking Money Silence, Breaking Money Silence, and also in a workbook that I did in 2010 called Creating Wealth from the Inside Out. But in general, you do that work either by yourself, or a skilled financial planner or advisor or a money coach can help you out too. But it is possible to change how you think and feel about money.
Yes, it is. I think it's possible to change how you think about anything, but it often takes some work to get there.
Absolutely. I mean, I think anytime you have a thought or a belief that it doesn't serve you, you can take some time and think about, is there a different way of viewing this? And often there is. And once you learn that skill around money or anything, you can use it in a variety of different places in your life, which is nice.
That's cool. So I think we're going to end it here. Okay. And thank you so much for your time today. And you want to tell people one more time how to find your book?
Sure. First of all, I want to say thank you very much, Josh. It was fun to do Facebook Live with you, even though I froze a few times. My book can be found on Amazon. It's called Breaking Money Silence. You can also go to my website at breakingmoneysilence.com and sign up for free tip sheets, promotions, and certainly reach out and let me know what you thought of either the book or this broadcast or my work. So thank you very much for having me.
Cool. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today. Appreciate it. And thanks for watching. And I hope to see you back here really soon at the Sustainable Business. Thank you.